Now that we know Caitlin Clark is the all-time leading scorer in women's college basketball, we can focus on the second most important item in all of college hoops. It is the reveal of Mike DeCourcy's new bracket. You see, the forecast is out. Our bracketologist has been living on nothing but looking at paper and drinking coffee for the last, 3.5 weeks. These are the teams in his latest bracket. Purdue, Illinois, Wisconsin, and barely Michigan State would be considered favorites in the first round if the tournament started today, and Mike was exactly right, which he always is. Northwestern has fallen to a 9 seed in the latest bracket. Nebraska hanging on just barely as an 11 seed. All right, so Mike DeCourcy now joins us, and the coffee cup is hidden somewhere below actual camera level. Mike, let's start with Purdue. They are clearly a 1 seed. They're clearly, in most people's eyes, the best team in the country. So over the next couple of weeks, what do the Boilers basically have to do?
Yeah, I was thinking about this, and I know Matt Painter's going to not want to hear this, and he may not be listening live, but then it's going to pop up on one of the re-airs, right? And he's going to see this, and he's not going to want to be here, have any connection with this at all, because I think if they get through the next week or two against the lesser part of their schedule, and then they close with Michigan State, at Illinois, and Wisconsin, I honestly think that they could go 1-2 in those games and lose the quarterfinal and still be a 1 seed. That's how far ahead they are of the fourth number 1 seed at this point, Arizona, who they beat in a neutral court game here in Indianapolis. So I don't think that Purdue's going to do that. I think Purdue is going to be more successful than that. But that's the bar that they've established at this point. How many laps they are ahead? They could pit, take on some new tires, have a diet soda, and then get back on the track and still be a 1 seed.
No question, it's either Purdue or UConn as the 1 overall, and it doesn't matter because geography this season is favoring Purdue and UConn. UConn's going to be in Brooklyn and Boston, fine. Purdue is going to be in Indianapolis. You get out of that, they'll be in Detroit. It doesn't matter which is the 1 overall. They're going to play where they want to play. They're going to be a 1 seed. It is locked. Bake it.
I love it. One of the slats on our rundowns, this is what we go by. It says Purdue's key, just don't screw it up over the last couple of weeks. I mean, that's about as accurate as it could possibly be, right?
Yeah. I mean, but to Mike's point, who else are you going to put there? And that line was underneath Mike there, 15 quad 1. Done. It's over.
And as Mike said, listen, every game, especially in the Big Ten right now, you can't predict anything, but their schedule does soften a little bit over the last couple of weeks. They'll be big-time favorites in pretty much the rest of the way. All right, Mike, let's focus on Illinois. This, to me, is a fascinating team. Without Terrence Shannon, they played fairly well. Shannon comes back. They have a few issues reintegrating him, and now he's fully back in. And last time out, he was just absolutely dominant and looked like the TSJ that could maybe lead this team to the Final Four. I've said this for a long time in watching this team, Mike. I think once they get outside of the Big Ten, they're a team that is going to mess up a lot of folks that don't see them on a regular basis because they are so big, so long, and have such unique size and skill.
Rick, I totally agree with you. I have them as a 4 right now, okay, and others may have them as a 3. It depends. It's a matter of flavor, and we'll see tomorrow what the committee says. But what I think should be their goal is to try to get into that range. 2 may be a little bit hard to reach, but it's not totally out of reach. Their schedule down the stretch doesn't provide a lot of elite opportunities for them to get attention-getting wins. So I think they need to play really well down the stretch and not take too many losses in a league that can do that to you, especially on the road. But if they can get into that 3 level, what the advantage that provides is not having to face a 1 until the regional final. They're certainly not going to have to deal with Purdue again after they get through Big Ten play until they reach the Final Four. Illinois and Purdue will not be in the same region. But they don't want to have to face a UConn, say, in the Sweet 16. They'd much rather, if they get the chance, play them in the Elite 8, or maybe somebody takes care of UConn for them. So I think that's the goal for the Illini right now. Continue to escalate their game, to improve, and then try to see if they can get up to a 3 or a 2. And I think if they do that, they're in a great position going into March.
Yeah, I think that of all these Big Ten teams we're going to talk about, they maybe have the biggest range because they could get as high as a 2 If they really stumbled, could they drop to a 5? All of that is possible over the next month. But I agree with you, Mike, and get them out of the Big Ten, and they're going to be very difficult to face. I also would say, even though they don't have the quad 1 games coming up as much, they're the kind of team that if they get and win the Big Ten tournament in Indianapolis, neutral court, that could potentially help them. Because as we've seen, the rest of the country, there are very few teams that have gone on a significant role to hold these various positions. So there is still movement on lines 2, 3, 4, 5.
That one team that was moving in the wrong direction, righted the ship last time out, but after 4 straight losses, Wisconsin at one point was 8-1 in the Big Ten, Mike, and we were talking about them potentially being a 1 seed. Now they're nowhere near that line. Where does Wisconsin land in your latest reveal?
Well, the latest one is a 5. They were as high as a 4 for me, and they were a 3 at some points, and even a 2. So they have fallen down. I had them as a 6 on Tuesday. I got a lot of heat from Badgers fans for that, but I thought that their performance, not necessarily recently, but what their recent performance had done to their resume took them down to that spot. I suspected they'd be back up to a 5 today, and they are. But what Wisconsin's concern here is they have to go to Iowa, then they have home against Maryland and at Indiana. And the reality is those are the kinds of games they've been losing lately. So they have to flip that. They have to win those games, all 3 of them. For a Badgers team that wants to be in the conversation for a 3 or a 4, they have to win those games. It's not easy, but those are teams that a team that's on that level is going to beat most of the time. Not all the time again, but most of the time they'll get those 3 wins. Later on down the line, they have to play Illinois. That's the kind of game that if they establish what I just described, winning all those games, they could afford to take the loss in the Illinois game and still hold in the 4-3 range.
I also would not dismiss that home Rutgers game. Rutgers has played very well in Madison. They've won 2 in a row the last couple of years, so that's going to be a dicey game for the Badgers. I just have a feeling, and I don't know this, obviously, that they may be that last team on the 4 line in the top 16 reveal. Somewhere in that last team 4, or when they discuss who the next group of 4 were for the 4 line, I think the Badgers are going to be right there. But again, they could stumble, like Mike says. They could be down all the way to a 6. I don't think they can get back to a 2. So it's probably going to be in the 4-5 range for them.
Yeah, that reveal coming on Saturday. We move down to the 8 line, which is where Mike has Michigan State. Now, last time we saw Michigan State against Illinois, they were terrific over this past weekend, right? And then they back it up with another win. Mike, this is a team that when they're really good, when Malik Hall and A.J. Hoggard get going, they're as good as anybody. But they've struggled to be consistent, and I'm guessing that's why they sit right in that middle of your seating.
Yeah, with their metrics, though, if they could get on a roll, and we've been saying this about them for a while, and they kind of have to an extent, but I mean, they have to really continue it. If they take it all the way down through February into March, if they get that kind of that momentum and the kind of record that would go with that momentum, they could get themselves up into the 6 range because of the metrics. They are so beautifully described by Ken Palm. Ken Palm loves them. The net loves them. And those are the metrics that matter most to seeding. Getting in is more about the record metrics, like strength of record and KPI, but those predictive metrics, the power metrics, are the ones that get you seeded. So if they can have a record that says, yeah, we're as good as our metrics, then at that point, the committee has to think about putting them in a more prominent position.
I think they can get as high as the 6. I wouldn't be shocked if they get to a 7. That's where they want to be. They don't want to be in the 8-9. No one wants to be in the 8-9. But again, they are a team. Remember, they were projected as a top 5, top 10 team in the preseason. That if they end up playing, hypothetically, a 1 in round 2, you are playing a team that is seeded to its record, not its talent. And that would be really tough. I'm going to flip around. I think that would be a tough game for the 1 seed in the second round if you get Michigan State in an 8-9 match.
If you get them at their best.
Yes.
Northwestern's an interesting case. They come off the loss to Rutgers. Mike, I know you have them as a 9. A few weeks ago, Cats fans were thrilled. We're going to be a really high seed. We beat Purdue. We beat Illinois. Is there any cause for concern here for that fan base over the next couple of weeks in Northwestern getting to the point where they actually have to win games?
Well, I think they have to win games because they have to prove that they're still a solid tournament team without Ty Berry. Last night didn't hurt them that much because it was a road game against a team that's surging and obviously is terrific at home regardless. But I do think that they need to win as many games as they can under those circumstances. And we look at their predictive metrics. They're a hard team to seed because of that. The predictive metrics do not stand up to a team that's beaten Purdue, Illinois, Dayton, etc. So they need to win games for both of those reasons. If they do, I think they'll be solidly in.
Got to win their home games. Be great if they could get another road win in here somewhere. What was difficult about that game last night was no Ty Berry, but then no Ryan Langborg. They are so thin on that perimeter now. And now if you essentially take two shooters out, which was what happened, comes down to the stretch run, and it's basically, boo, you got to win it for us. And they lost the lead, and it was down to one option, and he can't do it all the time. And so that really, I thought, just magnified their issues when Langborg gets ejected and you already don't have Ty Berry.
All right, let's touch on Nebraska, the last team in Mike's latest reveal. You have the Huskers as an 11 seed. Obviously, that means there is work to be done. What are you looking at when you're seeding Nebraska in that 11 spot?
Is it a good thing or a bad thing that their schedule doesn't include, other than possibly Rutgers, any tournament contenders the rest of the way? And we'll know by the time they play Rutgers, that's the next to last game, whether or not they have another game against a true contender. But otherwise, they don't. So they can't lose many because almost every one of those games would be sort of, I hate to use the term bad loss because we know the strength of this league, but it would not be a positive development for them as they fight to maintain their position in the bracket. So Nebraska has to finish well, and a lot of that will include playing well on the road because that's one area where their resume is weak. If they take care of business down the stretch in the way I described, they'll account for that as well.
And where they may get that tournament team is in their Thursday matchup in the Big Ten tournament, assuming that's where they are. And that game could end up being a significant game for Nebraska. Ultimately, I think they will get in and not play in Dayton. I think they'll either be a 10 or one of those last 11s that doesn't have to play in Dayton.
Always fun. We always get 1-2 teams in that Thursday game where you think to yourself, they have to win this game to get into the tournament.
Happened in Indiana a couple years ago.
A lot of times they then win that Friday game as well and feel really comfortable. I'll say this, Nebraska gets in. I think Fred Hoiberg is your Big Ten Coach of the Year.